I paid rent on my own condo for years, but when my parents let my freeloader brother and his wife move in, they demanded I pay double. So I secretly moved out and left them with the bill. Hey Reddit, my family turned my own home into a nightmare, drained my bank account, and expected me to bankroll my brother's latest failure. So I disappeared in the middle of the night and stuck them with a lease they couldn't afford. Here's how it went down. Picture this. It's 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I'm lying on a deflating air mattress in what used to be my storage closet. My phone lights up the darkness with a notification I never wanted to see. Payment declined. Insufficient funds. I blinked at the screen, convinced I was hallucinating. That checking account had $2,800 in it this morning. I'd checked it during my lunch break while reviewing design mock-ups for a client presentation. Then the second notification arrived. A text from my mother. We transferred your rent money to Kyle's account. He needs it more right now for his business relaunch. You can cover this month yourself, right? We know you're good for it. I sat up so fast the air mattress groaned beneath me. Down the hall in my master bedroom with the king-size bed I'd saved 6 months to buy, my brother was probably asleep next to his wife. Meanwhile, I was camped out in a windowless room that smelled like cardboard, and my parents had just helped themselves to my bank account, like it was a community piggy bank. Let me back up and explain how I ended up sleeping in my own storage closet while paying rent on a condo I actually owned. My journey to this nightmare started years ago, but the current situation began 3 months ago when my brother Kyle's latest venture collapsed spectacularly. And when I say latest, I mean it. This was failure number 7 in the past 5 years. First, there was the food truck that lasted 6 weeks before health inspectors shut it down. Then the dropshipping business that got him sued by customers for never actually shipping products. The personal training certification he paid $3,000 for and never used. The multi-level marketing scheme that cost him and everyone he knew hundreds of dollars. The online course about becoming a millionaire that he bought for $1,997 and watched exactly one module of. The day trading phase that somehow turned $8,000 into $400 in 3 weeks. And now, cryptocurrency. Kyle had spent 6 months becoming an expert on digital currency, which apparently meant joining Discord servers and watching YouTube videos made by other guys who also didn't know what they were doing. He dumped his savings, about $12,000, and borrowed another $15,000 from our parents into some coin called Moon Token that promised to revolutionize decentralized finance and disrupt traditional banking. The website had looked professional. The white paper had lots of impressive words like blockchain integration and quantum-resistant encryption. There was a countdown clock on the homepage. Classic scam markers that Kyle completely missed because he was too busy imagining himself as a crypto millionaire. The coin launched, spiked for exactly 72 hours, then crashed harder than the stock market in 1929. Turns out the revolutionary currency was run by 3 guys in Eastern Europe who vanished with everyone's money the moment they'd extracted enough value. Kyle's $27,000 investment became worth approximately $43. Couldn't even buy a nice dinner with the remains of his financial disaster. But the money wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that Kyle had been so confident about this scheme that he'd stopped paying rent 3 months before the coin launched. He'd told his landlord he was liquidating soon and would catch up on everything in one payment. The landlord reasonably was not impressed by cryptocurrency promises and started eviction proceedings. When the money evaporated, so did his lease. Apparently, he'd been 3 months behind on rent, banking on his crypto windfall to catch everything up. The landlord wasn't interested in hearing about blockchain technology or future potential. He wanted actual money, which Kyle didn't have. That's when my parents called with just a small favor. Could Kyle and his wife Tiffany crash at my place for a few weeks? Just until they got back on their feet and figured out their next move. They made it sound temporary, reasonable, like I'd be heartless to refuse. I should have said no. I should have reminded them that I worked 70-hour weeks to afford this condo, that I'd finally created a space that was mine after years of roommates and cramped apartments. But here's the thing about being the responsible sibling. You get conditioned from childhood to believe your resources don't really belong to you. Since I was 6 years old, I'd watched my parents treat my achievements like family assets that existed for collective benefit rather than personal accomplishment. The pattern was established early and reinforced constantly. When I won the school art competition in 3rd grade, my mother's response wasn't to hang my drawing on the fridge. Instead, she asked if Kyle could borrow my art supplies for his project since you're already so good at this and he needs the help. When I made the honor roll every semester in middle school, The family dinner conversation was still dominated by Kyle's struggles with basic math and whether he needed an expensive tutor. I got my first job at 15, working weekends at a coffee shop. My mother opened a joint bank account to teach me financial responsibility, but then regularly transferred money out of it for family needs. When I asked why Kyle didn't have to contribute, she explained that he was still finding himself, and I was naturally better with money. By the time I got my first real paycheck from my design internship during college, $2,400 for a summer project, my mother's response wasn't pride or congratulations. It was immediate relief. Thank goodness. Now you can help with Kyle's college application fees. Those SAT prep courses are expensive, and he really needs the support. I ended up contributing $800 toward a prep course Kyle attended twice before deciding standardized tests weren't his thing. When I bought this condo at 28 with money I'd saved through countless overtime hours and freelance projects on weekends, my father's first comment wasn't about my accomplishment. It was, good investment. Now the family has a place in the city for when we visit. Not, your place. The family's place. The family? Never me. Always the family. That's how they trained me to think. So when they asked if Kyle could stay, I said yes. Because that's what good daughters do, right? They share. They sacrifice. They put family first. What I didn't realize was that a few weeks was code for indefinite takeover. Kyle and Tiffany arrived with 7 suitcases, 2 desktop computers, a ring light setup for Tiffany's social media content, and approximately 0 plans for finding their own place. They walked into my condo like they were checking into a resort. Oh, wow. The master suite has such good natural light, Tiffany said, already calculating camera angles. We're going to need this for content creation. You don't mind taking the other room, do you? The other room she was referring to was the den, a windowless box I'd been using for storage. It had never been designed as a bedroom. It had no closet, no windows, and barely enough space for an air mattress once you moved the holiday decorations and extra furniture out. Actually, that's my bedroom, I said, trying to sound firm. Kyle laughed like I'd made a joke. Come on, Brooke. We need the space for our equipment. Tiffany's rebuilding her influencer brand, and I'm launching a podcast about entrepreneurship. We need professional setups. You're just sleeping here, right? You don't need windows for that. I looked at my parents, who'd come to help them move in. Surely they'd see how unreasonable this was. Surely they'd tell Kyle to respect my space. My mother smiled that tight smile she uses when she's decided something and doesn't want arguments. Brooke, honey, it's just temporary. Kyle needs the right environment to focus on his comeback. You understand, don't you? You've always been so accommodating. Accommodating. The word that had defined my entire relationship with my family. So I moved into the den. I deflated my air mattress every morning and reinflated it every night. I hung my work clothes on a tension rod in the corner. I kept my laptop and design materials in plastic bins. I became a guest in my own home. The first week was an adjustment. The second week was irritating. By the third week, I was living in what felt like a hostile takeover. Coming home from work became something I dreaded. My condo, my sanctuary that I'd decorated with minimalist furniture and plants and carefully chosen art, had transformed into chaos. Kyle set up his podcast equipment in the living room, which meant my white sectional sofa was buried under cables and microphones and sound panels. He recorded at 2 a.m. because that's when the creative energy flows, which meant I'd lie awake in the dark, listening to him shout motivational mantras through the walls. Tiffany commandeered my kitchen for her morning routine vlogs. She'd be there at 6 a.m. with her ring light, filming herself making smoothies with my Vitamix while ignoring my existence completely. If I tried to grab coffee, she'd get annoyed that I was ruining the shot. My Italian espresso machine became a prop in her content, something she'd gesture at while talking about self-care rituals. The bathroom situation was a nightmare. I'd wake up for work and find wet towels on every surface, Tiffany's extensive makeup spread across my counter, and hairstyling tools still plugged in and hot. My expensive skincare products started disappearing. Not stolen exactly, just borrowed without asking. The kitchen became a graveyard of their eating habits. My carefully organized pantry turned into a jumble of half-empty protein shake containers and fancy organic snacks that cost $14 a box. They'd use my dishes and leave them in the sink for days. They'd order food delivery to my address and leave the containers on the counter, creating an increasingly disgusting trash situation that I'd eventually have to deal with. But the absolute worst part was the lack of privacy. I had none. Zero. The den didn't have a door that locked, just a curtain I'd hung up. I'd be trying to decompress after a 12-hour workday, lying on my slowly deflating air mattress, and Tiffany would just push the curtain aside to ask where I kept the paper towels. No knock, no warning, just invasion. I started going to coffee shops just to have somewhere to exist that wasn't my storage closet. I'd work late at the office not because I had deadlines, but because I didn't want to go home. I'd take long walks around the neighborhood, killing time, wondering how my life had become this. And through it all, I kept telling myself it was temporary. Kyle would get his act together. They'd find their own place. Things would go back to normal. I was lying to myself. 2 months in, I was still paying the full mortgage, the full utilities, and the full HOA fees. Kyle and Tiffany paid exactly $0 toward any household expenses. When I gently brought up the idea of them contributing something, anything, Kyle got defensive. I'm in a rebuilding phase, he said, not looking up from his phone. Every dollar I make right now needs to go back into the business. You know how entrepreneurship works. You have to invest in yourself. I have a job, I pointed out. I'm investing in keeping a roof over our heads. Yeah, but your job is stable, he replied, like that was somehow a negative. I'm taking risks. I'm building something. You wouldn't understand the pressure. The pressure. Right. The pressure of living rent-free in someone else's home while contributing nothing. When I tried to talk to my parents about it, they deployed their standard defense. Family obligation speeches mixed with subtle guilt trips about my success. You're doing so well at your firm, my mother said. You're making good money. Kyle is struggling right now. Can't you just help him get through this rough patch? That's what family does. I've been helping for 2 months, I said. When does the rough patch end? Don't be selfish, Brooke. You have so much. Would it kill you to share a little? Share. That word again. As if I wasn't already sharing my entire living space, my furniture, my appliances, my utilities, my peace of mind, and apparently now my bank account. Because here I was, staring at my phone at midnight, learning that my parents had just taken $2,800 from my checking account without asking. I called my mother immediately. She answered on the third ring, sounding annoyed that I'd interrupted her evening, like I was the one being inconvenient. Did you just take money from my account? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. We transferred it. Yes. Kyle needs capital for his rebrand. He's hiring a designer for his podcast logo and needs to upgrade his recording equipment. This is important, Brooke. His whole future depends on getting this right. That's my rent money, I said. That's the money I need to pay my mortgage. You can cover 1 month yourself, can't you? You always have extra money saved. Besides, you're living at home right now anyway, so it's not like you need it immediately. You're not going to be evicted in a month. Living at home. She actually called my condo home like it was family property, instead of something I'd bought with my own money, my own credit, my own down payment. How did you even access my account? I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. You gave us your banking information years ago for emergencies, remember? When you were in college and studying abroad. We still had it saved. I did remember. I'd been 19 and in Spain for a semester, and they'd needed to transfer money to me quickly for what they'd called a family emergency, which turned out to be Kyle needed bail money after getting arrested at a party. I'd given them my account information temporarily, assuming they'd delete it afterward. Apparently, they'd just kept it, filed away for whenever they decided my money was needed elsewhere. That was 10 years ago, for emergencies. This isn't an emergency. Kyle's career is absolutely an emergency, she said, her voice taking on that sharp edge that meant she was done explaining herself. He's at a critical juncture. If he doesn't invest in his brand right now, he'll miss his window of opportunity. We're all investing in his success. That's what families do. We're not investing, you're taking. Without permission. That's called theft. Don't be so dramatic. We'll pay you back when Kyle's business takes off. Consider it a family investment. You know he's good for it eventually. Eventually. That magical word that had been erasing financial responsibility in my family for years. This isn't okay, I said, my voice shaking now, not from fear but from anger I'd been suppressing for years. Don't be dramatic, she replied, using the dismissive tone she'd perfected over decades of minimizing my feelings. We'll pay you back when Kyle's business takes off. Consider it a family investment. You know he's good for it eventually? Eventually. That magical word that had been erasing financial responsibility in my family for my entire adult life. Kyle would pay me back eventually. He'd get his act together eventually. He'd stop needing help eventually. Eventually was the horizon that kept moving further away every time you tried to reach it. I've heard eventually for 10 years now, I said. It never comes. You're being selfish and petty. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By counting pennies and holding grudges? after everything they'd done for me. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. What exactly had they done for me besides expect me to fund their mistakes? I didn't sleep that night. I just lay on the air mattress, staring at the ceiling of my storage closet, listening to the HVAC system hum through the walls. Somewhere in my condo, in my actual bedroom, my brother was sleeping peacefully on my expensive mattress. My parents were at their house, probably sleeping just fine too, comfortable in their decision to redistribute my money. And I was here, in the dark, realizing that to my family, I wasn't a person. I was a resource. The next morning, I went to work like normal. I sat through client meetings and design reviews and pretended everything was fine. But something fundamental had shifted in my brain during those sleepless hours. For 29 years, I'd operated under a specific framework. Family comes first. Success obligates you to help others. Saying no to family is selfish. These weren't just ideas. They were the operating system of my life, installed in childhood and never questioned. But lying in that storage closet at midnight, watching my bank balance drain without my consent, the operating system crashed. A new one booted up. This one ran on different code. You can't help people who don't want to help themselves. Enabling isn't love, and protecting yourself isn't selfish. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't make announcements. I just quietly opened my laptop during lunch and started searching for apartments. That evening, the situation somehow got worse. I came home from work to find my parents sitting in my living room, not visiting, waiting. There was a formal quality to their positioning. My mother on the sofa, my father by the window, Kyle sprawling in the armchair. It looked like an intervention setup. "Sit down, Brooke," my mother said. "We need to discuss something important." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Nothing good ever came from that tone. I stayed standing. "What's this about?" My father cleared his throat, slipping into his corporate voice. "Your mother and I have been discussing the current living situation. Kyle and Tiffany have been here for 3 months now, and it's clearly working well for everyone. They have the space they need, you have family around you, and we think it makes sense to formalize the arrangement." "Formalize?" I repeated. My mother pulled out a piece of paper from her purse. "We've drawn up a new agreement. Since there are now 4 people living here instead of 1, the wear and tear on the property has increased significantly. The utilities are higher, the space is being used more intensively, and frankly, Kyle and Tiffany need stability right now while they're building their businesses." She placed the paper on my coffee table. I could see numbers on it. "We've calculated that fair market rent for a property like this, divided by residents, comes to $1,400 per person. However, since you have the smaller room and Kyle and Tiffany are using more of the common spaces for their work, we've adjusted the split. Your new contribution will be $4,600 monthly." The room went silent. I felt like I'd been punched. "That's more than double what I'm paying now," I said slowly. "It's proportional to use," my father explained, using his reasonable businessman tone. "Kyle and Tiffany need the master suite for content creation and podcasting. They need the living room for equipment, the kitchen for Tiffany's cooking videos. They're running businesses from here, which adds value to the property. You're just sleeping here. I'm just sleeping here, in my own condo that I bought with my own money." "And what are Kyle and Tiffany contributing?" I asked. "They'll cover their own streaming services and food," my mother said. "And Kyle will do household management, making sure everything runs smoothly, coordinating maintenance, that sort of thing." Household management. The man who'd left moldy protein shakes in my sink for a week was going to manage my household. "Think of it as an investment," my father added, softening his tone the way he always did before asking for money. "When Kyle's podcast takes off and Tiffany's influencer brand grows, you'll be part of that success. Family invests in family. This is your chance to show you believe in your brother." I looked at the 3 of them. My parents sitting in my condo with their formal proposal to charge me nearly $5,000 monthly to sleep in a storage closet. My brother, who hadn't looked up from his phone during this entire conversation, clearly bored by the financial details of how he planned to exploit me. They looked so confident, so certain I'd agree, because I always agreed. I was accommodating, remember? "Can I think about it?" I asked. My mother's face relaxed. "Of course, honey. We know it's a big change, but we need your decision by tomorrow. The new rate would start on the 1st of next month, 5 days away." They wanted an answer in 5 days. "I'll let you know," I said. After they left, I sat in my storage closet and did the math. $4,600 monthly meant I'd be paying $55,200 annually to live in a windowless room in my own condo. I could rent a luxury apartment downtown for less than that. I could rent 2 apartments for that, but they weren't actually asking me to pay $4,600. They were asking me to accept a new reality. I didn't own this condo. I was just the person who paid for it while they decided how to use it. That night, I didn't inflate the air mattress. I opened my laptop and started planning my exit strategy. The first step was finding a new place, but I couldn't use normal channels. Any apartment search would create a digital trail. Credit checks, application approvals, references. My parents had shown they were perfectly comfortable accessing my financial information. I needed something invisible. I texted my friend Rachel, a contract attorney I'd known since college. Do you know anyone subletting? Quiet professional, no drama, immediate move-in? She responded within an hour. Actually, yes. My friend's a traveling nurse, gone for 6 months minimum. Studio in Belltown, furnished, $1,800 per month. Month to month. She doesn't need the income, just wants someone trustworthy watching the place. Interested? Very. By Wednesday morning, I'd signed a digital lease and sent the deposit. No credit check that might alert my parents. No public listing. Just a clean exchange between two adults who wanted simplicity. Next came logistics. I couldn't just rent a U-Haul and start loading furniture in the driveway. Kyle was home most days, and my parents had keys to my place. I needed a surgical extraction. I found a moving company that specialized in discreet relocations. They worked with celebrities, executives going through messy divorces, and people who needed to disappear quietly. They charged premium rates but guaranteed complete confidentiality. We can do overnight service, the coordinator said. You tell us when the property is empty, we arrive at 2 a.m. with a full crew, and we're gone by sunrise. Clean, quiet, professional. How much for a 2-bedroom condo, full furniture removal? $3,200. I didn't hesitate. Book it. Thursday afternoon, I had coffee with Rachel. I needed her legal expertise for something that had been nagging at me. Question about my lease, I said, sliding my condo documents across the table on my tablet. If I break it early, what's my liability? She scrolled through the PDF, sipping her iced tea. Then she stopped. She zoomed in on page 4, and her expression changed. Brooke, why are you worried about liability? You're not the primary financial guarantor on this lease. What do you mean? It's my place. It's your residence, she corrected, tapping the screen. But look at this guarantor clause. When you bought this condo 3 years ago, your income to property value ratio was slightly off because you were still freelancing. Your parents co-signed as financial guarantors. I'd completely forgotten about that. I'd been 26, transitioning from freelance design work to my current firm. The mortgage company had wanted additional security, and my parents had offered to co-sign. I'd thought it was just a formality. What does that mean? I asked. Rachel's expression turned calculating. It means if you default on the lease or break it early, the mortgage company and the property management company don't come after you first. They go after the guarantors. Your parents are legally liable for the full financial obligation until the lease term ends or someone else assumes it. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. So if I just leave, they'd be on the hook for the mortgage, the HOA fees, the utilities, everything. And given Kyle's credit situation, he definitely can't take over the lease himself. They'd have to cover it or face foreclosure proceedings. That's perfect, I said quietly. Rachel gave me a look. What are you planning? Justice. That night, I went through my condo room by room and made a comprehensive inventory list. Everything I'd bought, everything that was mine, everything I'd carefully chosen and saved for over the years. The white sectional sofa in the living room, I'd saved for 3 months to afford it, visiting the showroom 5 times before committing to the purchase. The 75-inch OLED TV mounted above the fireplace, a bonus reward from work for landing our biggest client. The smart lighting system I'd spent 2 weekends installing myself, programming different scenes for morning, evening, and movie nights. The custom motorized window treatments that cost $2,400 and took 6 weeks to arrive. The West Elm coffee table, the CB2 side tables, the hand-woven area rug from Morocco that I'd bought during a work trip. In the kitchen, my Italian espresso machine, the $500 Vitamix blender, the KitchenAid stand mixer in sage green, the all-clad cookware set, the complete set of Japanese knives, the Le Creuset Dutch oven, even the fancy salt and pepper grinders. The bar cart with my glassware collection, the wine fridge built into the island, the artwork on every wall, pieces I'd collected from local artists at gallery showings, each one chosen carefully, each one meaningful. The plants, 23 of them, ranging from a massive fiddle-leaf fig tree I'd nurtured for 2 years to the collection of succulents on the windowsill. The books lining the built-in shelves, organized by color, because I'm that person. In the master bedroom that Kyle and Tiffany had taken over, the custom bed frame from Room and Board that cost $1,800. The organic mattress I'd researched for weeks before buying, the matching nightstands, the brass lamps, the full-length mirror with the ornate frame, the dresser, the bench at the foot of the bed, even the bathroom items, the luxury towel set, the bath mat, the shower curtain, the organizational containers under the sink. Everything. Every single item that made this condo my home, instead of just empty square footage. I scheduled the movers for 2 a.m. on the 30th, the night before the new rental agreement was supposed to start. I'd confirmed that Kyle had a networking event at a club downtown that night, something he'd been talking about for weeks. Tiffany was taking their daughter to visit her mother in Tacoma for the evening. The apartment would be empty. I spent the next few days in a weird state of calm. I went to work, came home to my storage closet, had awkward dinners with Kyle and Tiffany, where they complained about various aspects of their lives, while I nodded and said nothing. Inside, I was counting down hours. Saturday the 30th. Kyle left for his networking event around 8 p.m., dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. Tiffany had already gone to her mother's place that afternoon. I was alone in the condo. I didn't relax. I started working. At 1:45 a.m., my phone buzzed. Team arriving in 15 minutes. The movers showed up at exactly 2 a.m. 5 people in dark clothes moving with practiced efficiency. They wore shoe covers and spoke in whispers. The crew chief looked at my detailed inventory list and nodded. Anything with an orange sticker stays, I said. Everything else goes. I'd put orange stickers on exactly 4 items. The cheap folding table Kyle used for his podcast equipment, a floor lamp from IKEA that was already broken, the basic coffee maker that came with the condo, and a card table with 2 folding chairs. Everything else was fair game. They moved like a surgical team. The sectional sofa, wrapped and removed. The TV, carefully packed and loaded. The smart light bulbs I'd installed, unscrewed and replaced with the basic bulbs the builder had originally put in. The custom curtains, taken down. The plants, boxed and loaded. Even the good silverware, the nice towels, the bath mats. I walked through the master bedroom where Kyle and Tiffany had been living. The expensive bed frame I'd bought, gone. The luxury mattress, wrapped and loaded. The nightstands, the dresser, the full-length mirror, all removed. They'd left their clothes, their equipment, their personal items, but every piece of furniture underneath was being extracted. By 4:30 a.m., the condo looked exactly as it had the day I'd first toured it. Empty, cold, expensive. I walked into the storage closet, my bedroom for the past 3 months. I left exactly 1 item behind. The deflating air mattress, sitting in the middle of the floor like a gray puddle of shame. If they wanted to live here so badly, they could start exactly where they'd forced me to start. Finally, I walked to the kitchen island, the only remaining surface in the entire condo. I placed 2 items carefully in the center. First, my key fob. Second, a printed copy of the lease agreement. I'd taken a bright yellow highlighter and marked one specific paragraph on page 4. In the event of default, non-payment, or early termination, the guarantors assume full financial liability for all mortgage payments, fees, damages, and legal costs until the property is released or the term expires. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave an explanation. The highlighted text was the only conversation we needed to have. I took one last look around the empty condo. The floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city lights starting to fade as dawn approached. It had been beautiful once when it was mine. Now it was just expensive real estate that someone else would have to figure out how to afford. I walked to the door, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. I pulled the door closed behind me and heard the lock click. It was the sound of a vault closing. The moving truck was waiting downstairs. I rode with them to my new studio across town, watched them unload my furniture, and by 6 a.m. I was sitting on my sofa in my new space. It was smaller. The view was less impressive. The building didn't have a doorman or a gym. But when I locked the door, I was the only person with a key. I made coffee with my espresso machine and sat by the window, watching my phone light up as messages started flooding in. 7:30 a.m. First text from Kyle. Where's all the furniture? 7:45 a.m. Call from my mother. I let it ring. 8:30 a.m. Text from Kyle. You can't just take everything. We had an agreement. 8:45 a.m. Text from my father. We're at the condo. We need to talk about this situation. 9 a.m. Video call request from my mother. I accepted the call. The screen filled with the stark emptiness of what used to be my living room. My mother's face was red, her carefully styled hair disheveled. The camera was shaking. Where is everything? She screamed. Where is the furniture? The TV? The dishes? Did you rob us? I moved, I said calmly. I took my property. Everything left in that condo belongs to you and Kyle. She flipped the camera to show Kyle standing in the middle of the empty space, looking genuinely lost. We can't live here. There's nothing here. The lease payment is due tomorrow. $4,600. How are we supposed to pay that? I watched her on the small screen. This woman who'd spent my entire life treating my success as family property. Actually, you're confused about something, I said. I'm not paying $4,600. I'm not paying anything. I moved out. I broke my lease. That means I'll lose my security deposit, but that's fine. You can't just leave, my mother shrieked. You have an obligation. You're right. Someone does have an obligation. I notified the property management company that I vacated. As the tenant, I'll face penalties for breaking the lease early. But here's the interesting part. I paused, letting the silence build. You and Dad co-signed as financial guarantors 3 years ago. That means you're legally responsible for the full mortgage payment, the HOA fees, and all associated costs until the lease expires or someone new takes it over. And given Kyle's credit score and employment situation, I doubt he'll be qualifying for a lease transfer anytime soon. The color drained from my mother's face. That can't be right. Check page 4 of the lease agreement, I said. I left a highlighted copy on the kitchen counter. Read the guarantor clause. You're fully liable. You can't do this to family, she yelled. I didn't do it to family, I replied. I did it to my financial guarantors who helped themselves to my bank account and tried to charge me $4,600 to sleep in a storage closet. You wanted this condo for Kyle so badly? Congratulations, it's all yours now. Good luck figuring out how to pay for it. Your father will call our attorney, she threatened. Great, they can explain contract law to you. Have a good day. I ended the call. The screen went black. The silence rushed back into my new studio apartment. Heavy, expensive, and absolutely worth it. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my studio apartment watching the city lights through windows that are just normal-sized windows. No floor-to-ceiling glass, no panoramic views of downtown and the Space Needle, just regular windows with basic blinds that let in decent light. My studio is 520 square feet. The kitchen is a galley with basic white appliances. There's no granite countertops or custom cabinets. The bathroom has standard fixtures, not the rainfall shower head and heated floors I had before. The building doesn't have a doorman, a gym, or even a parking garage. I park on the street. By every material measure, this is a downgrade. But here's what I do have. A door that locks, and I'm the only one with a key. A refrigerator where the food I buy is still there when I get home. A bathroom where my products stay exactly where I put them. A bed that's mine. In a room that's mine. In a space that nobody can take from me. When I wake up in the morning, nobody is filming content in my kitchen. When I come home from work, I'm coming home to silence and peace. When I sit on my sofa, it's actually my sofa, and nobody has draped cables or equipment all over it. When I make coffee, I use my espresso machine without someone complaining I'm ruining their shot. The space is smaller, but somehow I can breathe better here than I ever could in 1,400 square feet of luxury condo. I heard through Rachel, who stayed in touch with mutual acquaintances, that my parents had to liquidate a significant portion of their retirement accounts to cover the remaining lease payments on the condo. The mortgage was $2,200 monthly, plus $450 in HOA fees, plus utilities that ran around $300 with Kyle and Tiffany's usage. They were on the hook for nearly $3,000 monthly, for 9 more months until the lease expired. Apparently, Kyle didn't handle the eviction well when they finally had to leave. He'd put several holes in the drywall, damaged the hardwood floors by dragging his equipment out carelessly, and left the place filthy enough that my parents lost the entire security deposit and had to pay an additional $2,800 in cleaning and repair fees. Their credit scores took a significant hit from the late payments before they could liquidate enough assets to stay current. My mother had to go back to work part-time at a retail job, something she'd retired from 5 years earlier. My father postponed his planned retirement by at least 3 years. But worse than the financial hit was the hit to their pride and reputation. They'd spent years positioning themselves as the successful parents of 2 children, conveniently highlighting my career success while glossing over Kyle's perpetual failures. Now their friends and extended family knew the truth. Their son had failed so catastrophically that they'd lost tens of thousands trying to prop him up. Kyle moved back into their basement. According to Rachel's sources, he lasted 3 weeks trying to find a job before declaring that traditional employment doesn't align with his entrepreneurial spirit. His podcast ended after 3 episodes when he realized nobody was listening. Tiffany's influencer career never happened. Her follower count actually decreased after she stopped having access to my nice condo as a backdrop for her content. Last I heard, they were exploring new opportunities, which probably meant scrolling through get-rich-quick schemes online while living off my parents' increasingly strained finances. My parents tried calling multiple times in the first month after I moved out. The messages went from angry, "How dare you abandon family," to pleading, "We need to talk about fixing this situation," to bitter, "You've always been selfish." I didn't respond to any of them. What was there to say? They'd shown me exactly who they were and what I meant to them. Eventually, around week 6, they stopped calling. The silence was an answer in itself. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.